Welcome to the next episode of JT and the Don, presented by Give Us a Shot Network. I am the Don, Donato Bucci, and remember to subscribe to us, JT and the Don, all sports podcast, wherever you find all of your other favorite podcasts. And remember to leave us a 5-star review. And remember to also subscribe to the Give Us a Shot Network YouTube channel. You know, football season is right around the corner when we have our annual fantasy football show. But before we bring in our expert, let me welcome in everyone's favorite JT, Jimmy Thompson. How you feeling today?
Hey, man, they're not here to see me, man. They're here to see the legend, the expert. I'm here to get information, to steal money from you. But yeah, this is always one of the best shows, bro. This is like one of our favorite shows to do. So I'm excited to get started.
It definitely is. So let's welcome in senior sports writer at thegameday.com and JT and the Don fantasy expert in all fantasy sports, Frank Ammirante. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm ecstatic. This is my favorite show to come on in the year. I love talking with you guys. It's not the start of the season for me in the NFL until we do this one. I look forward to it. Thanks for the high praise, by the way. And can't wait to talk some fantasy football. It's the season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you again for coming on, taking your time. We know you're a busy guy. We see, all of your tweets or whatever they call it nowadays. So we know you are busy with a little bit of everything. So we appreciate.
Bro, you making yourself sound so old. Like, come on, man. Whatever the kids are calling them these days.
Whatever they're calling it these days. I don't know. Do you know what they're calling it? Do you?
They're called tweets.
All right.
I still call it tweets.
All right,
but
there we go.
I guess you could call it posts.
Okay. All right. See how nice Frank is about it. A lovely.
Look. I don't have to be nice. I got to deal with you every day. You don't.
I'm always nice to you. I don't know. So let's not argue in front of our expert. So we're just going to run through these questions. All right, Frank, and you give us a player and a quick explanation, and we'll do the same on some of these too, based on the question. So for the first question, give us the best player and a breakout player at each of the positions that we'll list here. So by breakout player, we mean for the listeners, we mean a player that can jump into the top 10 at their position in 2024 that was not in the top 10 in 2023. So let's start with the most important position in all of sports, or at least that's what I feel, quarterback, Frank. Who do you have as your best player and then the breakout player?
All right, best player, Jalen Hurts. Big upgrade at offensive coordinator with Kellen Moore in the sense that Moore likes to run fast-paced offenses. And we saw with the Eagles last year, even though Hurts was running wild, especially with the tush push, their offensive coordinator wasn't that great, Brian Johnson. Their offense wasn't the same as it was with Shane Steichen. Now I think they'll get back on track, more passing. Obviously the weapons are there. Now you add in Saquon Barkley. I still think the Eagles will use the tush push. I just think it'll be an overall more efficient offense where Hurts can air it out. And, really for me, for QB1, it comes down to Hurts versus Josh Allen. And what puts Hurts ahead is, Hurts has got A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, and Josh Allen just lost Stephon Diggs. Sometimes it's that simple. Like the Bills' weapons are not nearly as good as the Eagles. So that puts Hurts ahead of Allen for me in my QB1. As for the breakout, I picked someone who he didn't play last year because he's a rookie, but he's ranked outside the top 10. But I could easily see this player finish in the top 10, and that's Caleb Williams. And just because you look at the Bears supporting cast, the receiving core is fantastic with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze. Caleb Williams was thought of as a really highly touted prospect, coming into such a great situation. Plus, Caleb Williams runs a little bit. It's not like he's going to be a zero on the ground. He can run for 300 yards for you. And with that supporting cast and with those passing skills, I can easily see Caleb Williams finishing as a top 10 fantasy quarterback in points per game.
Wow. Listen, he starts to show off hot, JT. Comes in with Jalen Hurts, follows up with a rookie to go top 10. So
he's naming all the guys that we have no chance to get, man.
I know we don't have any chance in Dynasty, neither in redraft because we got a keeper league and we don't have those guys. So, Frank, that was great to start off the show. Fireworks right off the bat, I think, with Jalen Hurts. But he's got me sold on Jalen Hurts, number one. But JT, what do you say?
This is such a tough question because realistically, there's like 8 guys that could be QB1. They all have a legit, argument as to finishing the top quarterback. I'm gonna just go with a guy that's done it before, and I kind of see it coming, and I'm gonna shoot my shot. It's Lamar Jackson. Like we think about what we've seen him do in the past and what he did last year. They're giving him more weapons, best passing metrics of his career. He stayed healthy. It's year two in this pass-heavy offense, and now they got Derrick Henry take the rushing load off of him too, which makes him more dangerous in my opinion because he's going to be fresh more often, and that's more explosive runs and more explosive plays for him. So I think my pick is Lamar Jackson to finish as QB1 overall. But I mean, Jalen Hurts, he probably got a good shot to finish over that too. The breakout, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go with a guy that's technically already shown us he could be a top 10 quarterback or the QB1 already. That's Anthony Richardson. The only question with him is health. I think he played 3 or 4 games. He was like top 5 in points per game at the quarterback position last year. He just got to stay healthy. And if he does, I mean, we might be looking at prime Cam Newton putting up crazy rushing numbers and these big passing totals. So I would say Anthony Richardson is my guy that can be the breakout that can jump into the top 10.
So I like both of those picks for best player, but I'm going to go with history predicting the future. And it's Josh Allen. I mean, you look at what he's done the last 4 years, 3 of those years as number 1, 2 years ago as number 2. And let's face it, it's not like this guy had a ton of talent. It wasn't like he was throwing to Saquon or Marshall Faulk out of the backfield. It wasn't like he had a great tight end up until last year, who hopefully Kincaid makes the next big step. It wasn't like he had a great slot receiver or number 2. He only really had Diggs. And let's be honest, last year, Stephon Diggs, there's a reason why Buffalo traded him. They felt his value was not worth the price tag and that he couldn't do what he normally does. So, yes, I understand he doesn't have the weapons of a Jalen Hurts. And maybe for once, Lamar kind of has better weapons than Josh Allen for once. But even with all of that, I'd still go Josh Allen as best quarterback in terms of fantasy number 1 because he's going to have to do it all. He's going to have to run. He's going to have to QB sneak at the goal line. He's going to dump it down to probably Kincaid as a safety blanket and take his shots when he can. And we know he can throw. And then breakout player, I feel like this guy has done it before. So maybe this is a little bit of cheating, but because he's previously been top 10, but not the last couple years, I think it's Kyler Murray. I think he gets a second year in this system. He played only 8 games last year, 11 the year before. So that's why he fell out of the top 10, but you can't forget about him. Like, you cannot forget about him because he was a top 10 quarterback in other years, I think 3 or 4 years ago. So Kyler Murray makes his way back. So it's more of a comeback than a breakout, but I think people forget about him. And so he'll have that breakout again this year.
I like those picks. Mike Regina says, could you imagine having Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in the 2 QB league?
Be more specific. What if it's in a dynasty league, Frank? Do you think that's a good thing in a dynasty league?
Dominance. You're just dominating that league. Loving, and we didn't even mention Mahomes. You got to love Mahomes this year with a vastly improved receiving core with Marquise Brown, now Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice. Doesn't look like he's really going to get suspended. It's stacked now. I think Mahomes is going to go back to, last year was just a down year for him. So speaking of Mahomes, that's another legit candidate to get back to, elite fantasy production.
It's funny because you look at the NFL top 100 players and he was number 4. And there's 3 of us on this panel right now talking about who's going to be the number 1 QB in fantasy. None of us named Mahomes. You talk about a guy that we just start taking for granted, kind of like Steph Curry in basketball, and you almost forget the greatness of Patrick Mahomes because he makes everything look so easy. But real quick, Mike Regina, thank you, because Frank, yours truly, the Don, was able to get both Josh Allen and Mahomes in our Dynasty League that is commissioned by yours truly, JT. So
some people would call that robbery. So we're not.
It was not.
I don't want to give you any more praise.
Frank, real quick, Frank.
There's no way.
Is it a pretty fair deal? It's a fantasy show. Is it a pretty fair deal in Dynasty? You trade Mahomes, and in return, you get 3 first-round picks, all in that draft, 2024 rookie draft, in a 12-team league.
Was it the top of the draft?
It was 4, 8, and 11. So spread out.
The thing is, I will say I do like it for you still, just because it's 2 QB, and like obviously Mahomes is probably the safest. You got to think he's like one of literally the safest, picks in dynasty. Like you got to think he's gonna have a long career of being right at the top 5. So I do think you win the trade. It just maybe not a total, you know, uh, lopsided deal. Like the person could have got like Drake May, and then maybe
He ended up getting Jaden Daniels, and then Drake May, and then Brian Thomas.
yeah. So it's not bad. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, see, that's all I wanted to hear. It was a very
Frank,
fair
congratulations! You're gonna help
it
this
helped.
man
How'd you
sleep
get
better
3
at night.
first rounders?
Don't worry about it, Frank. Don't worry about it.
You tanked a year or something?
No. I made trades.
He's a career criminal. Let's just say that. That's why he has all those picks.
No, he's what you always have one of those in your league that just find a way to get these nice deals or just stack picks. He's one of those, huh?
Yeah, he's one of those.
I learned from JT. Let's put it that way. I learned from JT because I made trades with him to get a lot of his picks, and he stole Kincaid and Rashee Rice from me. So,
you know what? I'm not doing this with you. I got to do this with you every day. So, perfect transition. Let's go to the running back position, Frank. So, RB1, and then who's your breakout player at that position?
Well, I kept it simple, RB1. Even with today's news of the calf injury, just Christian McCaffrey, RB1. You got a generational producer at running back playing in the perfect situation with the 49ers. And now, if the Niners end up trading Ayuk, it just seems to be that way. That just opens up more usage. I'm not too worried about McCaffrey's injury. It just seems minor, and they're just why would they even risk playing McCaffrey in the preseason if that's the case? So I think he'll be fine for week 1, and it's just keeping it simple as McCaffrey RB1. Although I do love Bijan and Breece Hall this year, I just decided not to rank them ahead of McCaffrey, but I do if I'm able to pick my selection, I would rather get pick 3, 4, or 5 and hope Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson's there, just because I think they can easily finish as RB1. As for my breakout, this one's tougher because a lot of the running backs ranked outside of top 12, they're harder to pick as the top 10. But if I'm going to pick one, let's go with Kenneth Walker. He's getting a lot of talk in camp that, the new coaching staff really loves him. So, of course, it being a new coaching staff, they can easily, not have the same intentions as the previous one where they maybe mix in Charbonnet. Maybe this new coaching staff really loves Walker and wants to feed him. And they've been quoted. I saw a quote we need to feed this guy. And with Ryan Grubb coming from Washington as new offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, I think that could help their offense in general. More scoring opportunities for Kenneth Walker. He's an explosive runner, could take it to the house on any play. So that's going to be my pick for RB breakout this season. Hopefully he stays healthy.
I'm going to go with the best best running back being number 1, Saquon Barkley. I mean, he's still only 27. He's a house. I think he has a much better offensive line now. And answer this, Frank, because I really don't know the answer. Who's going to be the goal line back in Philly? I mean, does Kenneth Gainwell do it? Do they bring Will Shipley, a rookie, and trust him at the goal line?
Jalen Hurts is going to be the goal line back.
That's my concern.
And I understand that, but I think they also, no pun intended, they pushed back a little bit. They dialed back a little bit on that tush push. And listen, when the ball's at the 3-4 yard line, they're not running Hurts. They're not tush pushing from the 3 or 4 anymore when you've got Saquon Barkley. So I think that is why, yes, there's a lot of mouths to feed there. There's a lot of talent, a lot of really good players, but I'm still thinking, listen, this guy is still a number 1 back. Yes, if you're talking 5 years down the road or you're talking about contract-wise, but this is a different question. We're talking about just this year. I think he's finally going to be healthy with a much better team, a much better offense. I think he ends up being the number 1 guy. And listen, the defenses are weak, in my opinion, or not as good as the rest of the NFL. Washington, and I would even say the Giants, that he gets to play them 4 times. So, and then breakout, I'm going to go with my guy in Buffalo, James Cook. I mean, I think he only took 54% of the snaps last year, yet he ended up number 12 of running back. So he showed what he could do. he's going to get more than 2 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's got to. If Buffalo wants to win, they need to be able to get him more than 2 rushing touchdowns. He's going to be the feature back. And listen, with no Stephon Diggs, you never know how this offense is going to go. It might be heavy targets to Kincaid. It might be James Cook all day on the ground and in the air. You never know how it's going to go. So I'd put my money on James Cook breaking out, cracking that top 10.
Okay. I mean, Frank, I get it. It's McCaffrey until it's not, right? But I always say this. If I had the number 1 overall pick, I just can't see myself selecting him. Because anytime I know I do that, that's the time I'm going to get burned. And maybe it's just me with bad luck. But I'm going to go with the guy that has already been there, but just hasn't got the number 1 title yet. And that's Breece Hall. Like, he was RB2 last year with Zach Wilson. Like, imagine what he's going to do with Aaron Rodgers being back. So I would feel more comfortable selecting him, even though I really want to see Bijan Robinson be the RB1, but I don't got the guts to take him that high in the draft. But I'm going with Breece as RB1. And then the breakout, it was tough, man, because I was really decided between 2 guys. And it came down to the person that I think has a legitimate pathway to do it. And it's Isaiah Pacheco. You know, he's the workhorse back in a Mahomes, Andy Reid offense. That means he's going to get 10 to 12 touchdowns in his sleep if he stays healthy. So I like it. And I think they probably will get him involved, in the passing game a little bit more this year as well. So I think Pacheco is one of those guys that's out there that, he's kind of boring. We don't think of him as a guy that can really, help us win the fantasy championship. But I think he's got a big opportunity this year. And I think he's going to really turn a lot of heads.
Hey, Frank, let me ask you, since it's a fantasy show, and go off script here a little bit, because when I have these conversations with JT, he just always thinks I'm wrong. When he mentions, a guy like Breece Hall, in that he did this with Zach Wilson, and it's unbelievable he was this good with Zach Wilson. Does sometimes when you get a much better quarterback, I mean, a huge improvement, and on top of that, a Hall of Fame quarterback with now even more passing weapons as they've added some other guys, could he maybe regress, not skill-wise and not how we view him, but fantasy-wise? Because now, yes, maybe they can't stack the box, but they're going to throw it more. They're going to take more shots downfield, which, if it's completed, instead of an 80-yard drive that is a combination of both run and pass, a 40-yard pass now leaves only 40 yards remaining, and it's not all going to be rushing yards. So could there be concern that, yes, Breece Hall's phenomenal, love to have him on the Steelers, but fantasy-wise, does Rodgers coming back hurt his value?
So I see what you're saying, and the key there is the targeting downfield more, because you look at Breece Hall last season, he had 95 targets, and a lot of that is inflated because the offense was completely broken. Like you said, Zach Wilson, all he's doing, like checking it down to Breece Hall. Breece Hall had a 16 target game. So that won't happen really with Aaron Rodgers, because like you said, he's going to throw it downfield more. But I think we could say like a downgrade in targets, like instead of 95, maybe he gets, 70. But I think that's offset by the offense improving, more touchdown opportunities for Breece Hall. He only had 5 touchdowns last season, so you got to think that will increase. And also, on another note, being another year removed from coming back from the torn ACL, you got to think Breece Hall will have more of his burst back, so you could see him be more efficient on the ground. Like, let's remember, 2022, 5.8 yards per carry. Last year was down to 4.5. With better quarterback play and with his burst back, maybe he gets back to that 5 yards per carry range. But to your point, definitely would see maybe a slight downgrade in the passing production. But like I said, I think it's offset by the improvements in offense. And I still am totally on board with Breece Hall finishing as RB1. I rank him 3rd overall. So I love the 3 running backs this year: McCaffrey, Bijan, and Breece, my favorites.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I got to push back, though, Don, to your point. I get the concern.
Frank did it for you. Leave it to the
but I want to add to that, though.
Chime in. Okay,
because
go
you're
ahead.
taking shots at
Add
me,
no
and I
value
gotta
here.
defend
Add no
myself.
value here. Add no value here. But go ahead.
On top
Frank.
of what Frank said, also keep in mind Aaron Rodgers is coming off of a serious injury. So you act like he's going to be out there doing the things he did in Green Bay, running around, throwing off of one foot.
Well,
Like he's probably going to be looking to get the ball out fast. It's either going to be Garrett Wilson. If he ain't open, we go into Brees. So it might be the same or more.
And I understand that
as far as the volume is going to him.
And I understand that, but let's not be fooled. Aaron Rodgers is going to do what he wants. He thinks he can still do what he could do at 28.
Yeah,
now that he's 38,
Father Time has the final say.
We
he
understand
might want to do what he wants to do.
Those
but
guys
hey,
don't
if
think
that
that
Achilles isn't feeling right, it might not happen.
True. Those great athletes like that don't think that way. All right, so Frank, next position, wide receiver.
So wide receiver, again, this is not a bold pick. CeeDee Lamb as a wide receiver 1. The Cowboys continue to play at a pass-heavy and fast pace. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb showed he's just a superstar alpha receiver, just earns targets at a crazy rate. Lamb, just you look at his game log, he just got better as last season went along. He just really exploded. Not like I said, not a lot of target competition. There's Jake Ferguson, Brandon Cooks is on the decline, Jalen Tolbert. You look at their backfield, Rico Dowdle and Zeke Elliott. Like, this is going to be a pass-heavy team. They need to feed CeeDee Lamb. So we're keeping it simple here. We're leaving him as wide receiver 1. As for the breakout, this player is considered a good receiver. So in that sense, you may say he's already broken out. But from a fantasy football standpoint, I think he's going to have a career year, and he could absolutely finish in the top 10 if it breaks right. That's Devontae Smith. Kellen Moore puts his top receivers in the slot more, like he did it with Keenan Allen, and it had huge rewards for Keenan Allen's production. And reports are Devonta Smith could see more time in the slot, so that can help him out. And I think we're going to see him set a career high in receiving yards. Like, his career high is 1196. I think we'll go over that. I think with Kellen Moore, like I said, calling plays, faster pace, more passing, a little more than previous years. And then if AJ Brown were to miss any time, or Dallas Goedert, and Goddard, let's face it, he's missed time. Obviously that's more upside for Devonta Smith. So I think this is just a really good player that we haven't seen his best football yet. And now in a scheme that could really put him in a better position to produce at a higher level, I think Devonta Smith has a career year.
Hey, Frank, don't put that on AJ Brown. I got AJ
Brown.
Put
it on AJ Brown.
Don't put that on AJ Brown.
If I got to hear about AJ Brown and his value one more day. So are you predicting that AJ Brown is going to play the Mike Williams role and be more of, just downfield?
No. I still like AJ Brown more. I just think that also Kellen Moore uses more motion in his offense, a lot more than their previous offensive coordinator. So it'll help AJ Brown too, but it's going to help both of them. Because when you're in motion, it's easier for you to get open and you get those layup targets. I think we'll see that more for Smith, and I think he can have a career year. But it's not to say that I don't like Brown. I think I still like him a lot. It's just I could see, Smith having a better year than usual while Brown continues to do Brown things and, meet his value, his ADP.
Okay. I mean, I think the answer is
I liked how you recovered with AJ Brown. You had me worried for a second.
No, I still like him.
JT.
I think the answer is CeeDee Lamb, just for everything you said, but I'm going to go a different route. I mean, I think he is the guy, but I'm going to be risky here and go, let's say Garrett Wilson, man. Like, everybody's been telling me this guy's a superstar receiver, and, he's had bad quarterback play since he's come into the league, but the underlying stat that's there is he's like top 3 in targets over like the last 2 years among all wide receivers, and now he gets Aaron Rodgers back. Don thinks he's the Aaron Rodgers of old, so we're going to go with that. And I'm just thinking of this. The last time Aaron Rodgers had a receiver this talented, I'm thinking think about what 2020 Devontae Adams put up in that COVID year. Like, it was insane numbers. Like, he won people fantasy championships. Like, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and Garrett Wilson is as good as we think he is, like, that's the kind of season that we could see for him. So I'm picking him as the wide receiver 1 just because everything is finally going to come together. The volume, the talent, the quarterback play. And for the breakout, that's tough because there's so many guys you could put in this category. But I'm going to take a page out of Don's book. I'm only going to speak about my guys. and speak their success into existence. And I'm going to go with a guy who had a mini breakout last year, and he's starting to give me Amon-Ra St. Brown vibes, and that's Rashee Rice. If he don't get suspended, this is clearly Mahomes' number one target, not Travis Kelce, but as a receiver. And we see when Mahomes trusts you, he's going to go to you every play no matter what. So if you're telling me Rashee Rice not going to miss no games, it's year 2 of him with Mahomes and Andy Reid. I definitely think there's an opportunity for him to jump into the top 10.
I'm going to agree with Frank, the expert. It's CeeDee Lamb. It has to be. Like, he's trying to get a new contract, or I should say an extension. So he did that on a non-contract year, and now they're still discussing extensions. Dallas Cowboys say they're not going to talk about it now. I don't know if that just means in the media, but you know he's going to come out hot. He's going to come out firing. He wants that extension. And on top of that, Dak is on a contract year. So you know Dak wants to show out too. And if he's smart, which he is, he's going to feed CeeDee Lamb to make himself, meaning Dak, look good to get that big contract. Because I think the Cowboys are basically saying, well, you're not going to do that well, and you're not going to get the Tua contract. You're not going to get the Trevor contract. And if you do, it's only going to be right around there. You're not going to explode and get $60 million a year. So they're gambling on it, and Dak is like, oh, let me show you. Whoever the OC is, I'm not running the ball. I'm not throwing it to the tight end. I'm going to CeeDee Lamb every time. And again, I don't believe the defenses are that great in the NFC East that they can continually stop CeeDee Lamb on a regular basis. And I think the breakout guy is Michael Pittman. And I know we've probably said this before, and I've gone with him before, but he was 13th last year, 109 catches, over 1,100 receiving yards, and only 4 touchdowns. But with who at quarterback, Frank? Like, who did they have out there? They had 3 different guys. Now he gets Richardson back. So, JT, if you believe Richardson's going to be the breakout guy, that means someone got to go with him. And it's
him.
No,
but doesn't that worry you though? Because he did all that last year with no Richardson, and basically Jonathan Taylor wasn't there for a majority of the year. So it's Gardner Minshew with nobody else to go to. But it was like a funnel to Michael.
How is it? But how is it any different? Because
it's a big difference. I'll tell you how. We don't know how much of a good passer Anthony Richardson is. Like, how many wide receivers can he support? We're talking about him as a breakout quarterback. Let's be real. It's the rushing numbers. Like, we're expecting him to run at a crazy rate. He's gonna be getting in the end zone at the goal line, and then the second best player in that team is Jonathan Taylor, who's also running back. So I just don't see where the usage for Michael Pittman is gonna come from. I think last year was his best case scenario, but it was with that scenario with Gardner Minshew with those 2 other guys missing. Like, are you that confident that he's gonna be a top 10 receiver with the new quarterback like Richardson?
JT, you act like the real JT, meaning Jonathan Taylor, is going to get 50 carries a game. That's not the way it is. Steichen never did that in Philly. Like, he is going to feed his guy. He's a smart OC. He's going to feed his guy. In the same argument you just made for Garrett Wilson, because the Jets have Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers ain't running the ball.
But you said he's going to dump it down because of his Achilles. That's why Breece Hall is going to be great. But yet you just picked Garrett Wilson to be the number one guy. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Hey, look, he can still get short targets. You got like Devontae Adams was just catching go routes when he was with the Packers. Nah, he was catching the ball all over the field. Look, I'm not saying Michael Pittman is not a good receiver. I'm saying
you gave a lot of pushback here. Let me give my
what he did
counter.
last year is, I think, best case scenario, and it's more because of Gardner Minshew than you want to admit.
But how in the world could you say that? But that's false, because if
who else did they have on the team last year?
I like Gardner. Who else do they have this year?
They got Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, who also runs the ball.
Okay, but again, are they going to run the ball 40 times?
They might.
If they do, they're going to lose, because you're going to lose Richardson again to an injury. You just said he's going to be the breakout guy for QB, all because of running. That's false. You know it's because of his arm.
So quarterbacks that run at a high rate and score a lot of rushing touchdowns don't perform well in fantasy? Or are we just forgetting the rules now?
No, but that's usually because they don't have a legit elite receiver. Go look at Cam's days, right? Like, go look at Lamar.
I got to chime in a little bit. The one thing that my concern, you know, it's what was Anthony Richardson's negative coming out as a prospect? He's raw as a passer, and I know he showed flashes last year and he was exciting, but we still have those same concerns. He hasn't addressed them yet. And I know Minshew is whatever; he's just a backup, but he could keep the offense on schedule. What if Richardson struggles a bit as a passer, and that could lead to a slight downgrade to Pittman? Not to say Pittman will be a bust. I just think maybe there's a risk he can, have a down year compared to last. But if Richardson, exceeds expectations as a passer and this Colts offense is just humming with Shane Steichen, like you said, he's a great play caller. Pittman has proven himself as, a guy that can really earn targets at a high rate. And so there's a scenario where I could see what you're saying, that Pittman builds off last year. But if I have to make a pick, I say there's a slight downgrade with Pittman. Like, hey, Josh Downs is pretty good year 2. They drafted A.D. Mitchell. What if he shows something? There's some more target competition. But I know Pittman will still obviously lead the team in targets. Just a slight concern with Richardson there.
So my thing though
and
is,
Frank, and you forgot to mention
hold
his
on,
favorite player that's also
already
fighting for targets, Jelani Woods. Don swears he's the next Gronk for the last 3 years. So you got all that target competition, and this guy's going to jettison into the top 10.
So if you get back to being serious, because JT always thinks he's right.
I am being serious. He's tied in one.
If you get back to being real, look at the last 3 years. The guy barely misses a game, and you look at the last 3 years: 17th in PPR, 20 and then 13 last year. Name the 3 quarterbacks those 3 years. I mean, you're acting like Anthony Richardson is a bum compared to the 3 guys he's had in the last 3 years. Richardson's not that far off.
I think you're acting like Gardner Minshew's not a good quarterback. He basically put up the same stats as Trevor Lawrence. So they had Trevor Lawrence throwing Michael Pittman the ball last year.
He is good, right? You keep taking shots at my fantasy teams, and that's
what the stats say. Go put their stats side by side and tell me what you see.
And the stats say that Pittman's going to take the leap. He is going to take the leap. Second year in this offense, and he's going to take that leap.
Look, man, I never thought we'd spend this much time on Michael Pittman, but there you have it. Michael Pittman, breakout wide receiver.
You know I'm right, and you don't want to give me credit.
Nah, we just ain't got the heart to tell you to stop doing this. But let's go to the most unique position, tight end. So I'm really excited to see where you guys land on these. So Frank, tight end 1, and then breakout.
All right, let's start with tight end 1. Let's go with a little bit more bold slightly. We'll go with Trey McBride. Second half of the season, he completely balled out. I know they added Marvin Harrison, but while that will take away some targets, it will also open up room, and it will make the offense better overall. So more touchdown opportunities. And McBride is still a top 2 target in this offense, just like, say, Sam Laporta is with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Similar thing. So it's not really a big deal that Harrison's there. It will help McBride have touchdown opportunities. Add in the fact the Cardinals' defense is awful. They're going to have to really play in these shootouts. You look at that defense, like, pretty no-name group, all respect to them. But, yeah, not a good defense. They're going to have to play in shootouts. Trey McBride really thrived when he had a full-time role last season. I think he builds on it. And that's my pick for tight end 1. Even though I rank Laporta higher, I wanted to go bold with this pick. I have McBride at 2. I have them both ahead of Kelsey, in fact, in my rankings. You can find it at thegameday.com. But, yeah, summing it up, McBride, good offense, bad defense. Harrison helps out the offense. I needed to go bold with tight end breakout because top 10 tight end, like, there's a lot of tight ends there, and it wouldn't be that bold to say like Brock Bowers or someone like that. So let's go with Luke Musgrave of the Packers. Coming out of college, Musgrave was a touted prospect. He was considered in that draft probably behind Kincaid, Mayer, and Laporta as a prospect. So he's no slouch, and that was considered one of the best tight end classes in recent memory in the draft. And, Musgrave dealt with some injuries, but he made some big plays. Tucker Kraft, his fellow year 2 tight end, is dealing with an injury. Jordan Love looked like an MVP candidate in the second half. That Packers offense could be fantastic. I know there's a lot of targets in that offense, but this is really just a case of betting on a talented player in a good situation with a good quarterback and a high-scoring offense. So we'll take a bold pick with Luke Musgrave there. Now, that's not to say in your conventional league, you got like 5-6 bench spots. You start one tight end. You're not going to really draft Luke Musgrave in that kind of setup. But if your league is deeper and, maybe play in one of those tight end premium, it's 1.5 points per reception. Maybe you're in best ball. Musgrave is a good late round pick. And if you're in your, traditional format, just keep an eye out early in the year on the waiver wire, see how he's doing. But he's got upside this year.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go with the obvious one. I think it's Travis Kelce because he had his lowest numbers in fantasy since 2015. In addition to that, missed 2 games, and I think that led to some of the numbers being lower. But the guy really doesn't miss many games, even though he is getting older. And I think this offense, you guys touched upon it earlier, I think they're going to be even better. And I think his goal line production will get back to maybe not at his peak level, but I think it's going to be better than what it was last year. I do think Rashee Rice took some of those touchdowns away. I don't know if he gets as many touchdowns this time, but I think Travis Kelce makes up for that because I think there'll be a little bit more of a quick strike offense. So he's going to have more opportunities. And then I'll leave the obvious breakout one for JT. So I'm going to go with my guy in Pittsburgh, Pat Freiermuth. Couple reasons. Pittsburgh loves their tight ends. I think he is a star tight end kind of waiting. He's just been in the wrong offense. And I think whether it's Russell Wilson, where we've seen him maybe go back to the tight end more, play action pass more with Arthur Smith, and whether it's Justin Fields, who we saw what he can do with Cole Kmet, I think either one of those guys, along with how Arthur Smith's going to build this offense, I think Pat Freiermuth, he may not have these gaudy numbers, but he's going to get targets and he's going to get red zone looks. And I think that'll be the difference that really gives him that breakout year. Again, not as athletic as some of these other guys, but still athletic enough that he should fit this Steeler offense really well.
Yeah, you actually stole one of my breakouts in Freiermuth. I agree with you. For all the the crap that we give Arthur Smith for being a shitty coach, man, like one thing he will do is he'll give the tight ends usage. So it's either going to be Freiermuth or who's that guy as the backup, the huge 6'7" guy. Washington. One of them is going to be the breakout.
Don't buy into what he said. You know why he said that? Because I have Freiermuth. I have Freiermuth in Dynasty. He has Darnell Washington in Dynasty. That's why he knows exactly who that guy is.
I forgot he was even on my team. He must be stashed somewhere on the bench deep where no one looks. But yeah, I agree. I think Freiermuth could be in for a big year. I mean, they got the quarterbacks. The play caller is going to target the tight ends. I mean, look at Jonnu Smith broke out last year. Like, imagine what Freiermuth could do. Look, guys, I told myself I wasn't going to do this. I want to pick Kyle Pitts as the tight end one. I want to do it. I do, because this is the time where we're like, you know what? Nah, we ain't falling for it again. And then he shows us and reminds us who he really is. But I'm not going to do it because I don't want to end up on this list 2 years in a row having to, admit my mistakes.
So I love him this year.
I do too. But I want to go with the guy that, hey, look, everything's set up for him to be the tight end one. This Dalton Kincaid. And we saw him do this last year. Started off slow, but really hit his stride down the stretch with Josh Allen. You guys talked about it. There's no Stephon Diggs. We don't know where this offense is going to go. Like, this legit is Josh Allen's wide receiver one. Don says he's the best quarterback. You already said he's been the number one quarterback the last 3 or 4 years. I want the guy that his number one target. So I think it's Kincaid. Like, imagine if Dalton Kincaid gets 140 to 150 targets from Josh Allen. And I'm pretty sure the Bills' defense ain't what it used to be, too. So they're going to be in some shootouts as well, especially in the AFC East. So you're telling me I get the wide receiver one at the tight end position for the best quarterback? I mean, I'm sold. So I'm going with Dalton Kincaid. And for breakout, let me think off the top of my head, because my breakout was Kyle Pitts, but I feel like that's too easy. Let me see. Who should I pick? You know what, man? I'm gonna stick it to Don. I'm going with Darnell Washington, man. Just because Arthur Smith is on the Steelers. Like, let's legit think about this. Let's not act like Washington was this terrible prospect coming out of college either.
No,
he's a freak of nature. Like, we seen him at Georgia, and the only reason he didn't break out at Georgia is because of who? Brock Bowers. So now he's with a coach that will actually use him, and he's got some good quarterbacks. I'm not saying he's going to be, tight end 5, but like, is it out of the realm of possibility that he's not like tight end 12 to 15? I mean, that's a crazy leap. So I'm going to pick him as the breakout.
The only thing I would say is in the history, I've watched a lot more Steeler games than you have, JT.
You ain't
And
watched Arthur Smith games as a
we
Steeler fan.
we've always had this idea of two tight ends and this and that, and it's like the Steelers are going to ground and pound the ball. And when you've got Pickens, you have other guys, offensive weapons. We're going to throw screens to Jalen Warren. Like there's only so many passes that can go to the tight end. So, you can put your head down and show the ugly Bengals hat, but at the end of the day, you're a Dolphins fan wearing a Bengals hat. But I just don't know if there's enough targets for both
Because I love how
Freiermuth and
irritated
Washington.
this hat makes you. Like I've had this hat for a decade, and every time I show this hat, you get anger and anger. This is like one of the easiest things on the planet. Why would I not do it?
So,
See?
Frank, let's go to defenses real quick. Top defense and then the breakout defense that will come out of nowhere.
Top defense, I'm going to go with the Jets. Last year, even with atrocious quarterback play, like we mentioned, some of the worst you'll ever see, they still finished, I believe, top 5 in fantasy points per game. Now, with good quarterback play, what does that do? That puts the defense in better situations. They're not hung out to dry with short field position, constant punts where their offense can't move the ball, and then they're tired, and then that's how the other team scores on them. Now they're going to be playing more with leads. What does that mean? More opportunities to rack up sacks and turnovers. And this Jets defense is just completely stacked. I'd be looking to try to get them in fantasy. Not to say you're going to reach on a defense too much, but I think they're going to finish top scoring fantasy defense. Now, breakout one, I'm going to go with the Bears because once they traded for Montez Sweat, they really started to find their groove. They were playing much better in the second half. And now with, Justin Fields was good in fantasy, but like their offense wasn't as well-rounded, of course, as it is now, adding Keenan Allen, Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze. So that's going to help out the defense. I think the Bears could make the playoffs this year. They'll be a winning team. So you want to have a defense on winning teams because if they're playing with the lead more, and like I said, that's more favorable for fantasy points because if you're playing with the lead, the opposing team needs to pass more, and that obviously has more opportunities for sacks and interceptions. So give me the Bears as the breakout.
I like it. I like those picks. JT, we'll have you follow up. Won't be as good, but go ahead, try to follow up.
It's hard to follow that. I'm gonna go a different direction. I think the defense that's gonna be number one is gonna be the Eagles. And I think just change of scenery, having new coordinators that the team feels confident in, and I think they actually draw up good schemes for them to go out there and play defense. So the Eagles always have talent on defense. They basically have, all the Georgia National Championship players just getting better in the NFL. And you said it's about playing with the lead. I think the Eagles obviously going to be one of the best offenses in the league. So they're going to be up a lot. And that division, you get to play Daniel Jones twice and a rookie quarterback twice. Like you only got to worry about Dak and CD. And I think, those games could go either way. So I'm going with the Eagles as my number one defense. And then the breakout, I want to say the Seahawks just because their coach just led the Baltimore Ravens to like an epic comeback of, playing defense. They won the Triple Crown. So I'm excited to see like what he does out there in Seattle with the defense. I know the offense is taken care of, but usually those defensive coaches, like they leave their mark on the team. So that's my breakout.
I like it. Frank, I agree with you. I think it's the Jets. They were actually number 4 last year in fantasy and just being on the field less. They're going to be on the field less, probably playing with the lead, which means they'll be able to make plays, ball hawk, do whatever they need to do. So I think that is about as close as you can get to a shoe-in because if they can do that at number 4, they've got to be better, especially if Reddick eventually shows up. And the breakout, I'm going to go.
He ain't coming to work.
I'm going to go way out on the ledge here for this one. They're going to play in a tough offensive division, but I'm just going to spice it up. I'm going to go Green Bay. They signed Xavier McKinney, big free agent splash, 4 years, $67 million at cornerback. They've got good pieces in the secondary, and they've got a new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley. And one of the things is he wants more big plays. And when you talk fantasy, you don't always need to be this Baltimore defense that shuts teams down, a Jets defense that shuts teams down. We've seen it before with the Chiefs before where they're just a turnover machine. They might give up 400 yards, but they're a turnover machine. They get a touchdown every 4 games, and all of a sudden you look up and they're a top 10 defense, and you're like, how? And I think that's the way Green Bay can play. Even their offense has said this defense looks completely different compared to what we've faced in the past. And I think he's going to emphasize that big play mentality. And a lot of times that can be contagious. All of a sudden, a strip sack here, a forced fumble here, a pick six here, and all of a sudden you've got a top 10 defense, and you're like, this defense really isn't that good, but because they make the turnover. So going to go out on a ledge there. They could end up being the bottom of the barrel again, especially in that division with the Bears upgraded Detroit and Minnesota with their weapons with Justin Jefferson. So little risky, but I'll swing for the fences there with Green Bay.
I like it.
I like it. That's kind of disappointing. You guys picking 2 defenses that are in the division we're counting on for offense.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
It's
Man,
risky.
It is risky. But I mean, you guys are 2 geniuses. So if that works out, that means you should not be drafting any players in that division.
I will say this for Green Bay: they're going to face probably 2 rookies, right? J.J. McCarthy and Caleb Williams. Now we expect both of them to be good, but it doesn't mean they're not going to have their rookie lapses.
Rookies are rookies,
right?